Take a look at the smartphone you probably have sitting right next to you, or maybe the one you're holding in your hand right now. It feels like a purely modern miracle, doesn't it? But the truth is, that incredible piece of technology is the direct descendant of 19th century electrical sparks. It connects all the way back to the foundational scientific discoveries of pioneers like Alessandro Volta, André-Marie Ampère, and Michael Faraday. Those early thinkers proved that electrical signals could travel along conductive wires, and in doing so, they sparked a revolution that completely redefined the relationship between space, time, and human interaction. Welcome to our explainer on the dawn of the electronic communication age. Today, we're going to explore exactly how humanity overcame its absolute oldest barrier, the barrier of physical distance. Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for this explainer. We've got 5 massive conceptual leaps to cover today. We'll start with 1, the end of distance, then move into 2, coding the first grid, followed by 3, transmitting the human voice, 4, harnessing invisible waves, and finally 5, a planet interconnected. Each of these wasn't just some slight improvement. They were massive leaps that directly built the interconnected digital world we're living in today. Let's start right in with part 1, the end of distance, sparking the communication age. In the rapidly expanding 19th century world, society was accelerating fast, and information desperately needed to move faster than a horse could gallop or a ship could sail. To really appreciate how fast things changed, just consider this timeline. In 1844, we get the first practical telegraph. Barely over 2 decades later, in 1866, the first durable transatlantic cable successfully links continents. 10 years after that, in 1876, the telephone is patented. And by 1901, the first wireless signal, the letter S, is beamed across the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, think about that for a second. In less than a single human lifetime, actually a dizzying span of just 57 years, the entire globe shrank. The communication delay between continents went from weeks to absolute zero. That brings us to section 2, coding the first grid, and the power of abstraction. Here, Samuel Morse didn't just invent a machine, he invented a way to turn human thought into a symbolic code sent over a wire. Now, what's really interesting about this is the underlying mechanics that actually made Morse's dream possible. Because you see, electricity running through a wire naturally loses its strength over long distances. Enter the electromagnetic relay, developed by Joseph Henry. These ingenious little devices act kind of like relay runners. They take a weak electrical signal, amplify it, and send it fresh down the next stretch of conductive wire. Without Henry's relay, Morse's signals would have just died out after a few miles. His dreams of a long-distance grid would have literally lost their spark. Armed with this technology, we arrive at a truly cinematic milestone. In 1844, Samuel Morse taps out the message, "What hath God wrought?" He sends it from Washington, D.C. all the way to Baltimore. And it is hard to overstate how earth-shattering this exact moment was. It proved once and for all that meaning could be fundamentally separated from physical presence. You no longer had to be in the room to have your words heard. Your message was now completely decoupled from your physical body. So what did this actually do to society? Well, the impacts of the telegraph were immediate and incredibly transformative. It coordinated railway schedules, which drastically reduced deadly train collisions. It allowed newspapers to deliver reports in hours instead of days, completely accelerating how the public received information and formed opinions. But most importantly, it created the first large-scale electrical information grid. And why does this matter to us today? Because it perfectly foreshadowed our modern concept of a global village. For the very first time, humanity realized we could exist in a shared informational space regardless of where we physically were. Which perfectly sets up section 3, transmitting the human voice, the shift to intimacy. With Alexander Graham Bell, we move from specialized abstract code to the raw emotional transmission of human speech. When we compare these two eras, the philosophical leap becomes super clear. The telegraph was this world of coded abstraction, right? It required highly specialized operators who knew Morse code operating via binary electrical pulses. But the telephone? That offers the direct human voice. It brings immediacy and intimacy. It transforms acoustic energy into electrical signals and back again. The telephone was revolutionary because it turned machines into direct extensions of our human sensory capacity. The tone, the rhythm, the anger, or the joy in someone's voice could now physically travel across wires. And that leads to this incredibly famous vignette in 1876. Bell spills acid on his clothes and shouts into his transmitter, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." And Watson actually hears the intelligible speech through the receiver in another room. Suddenly, you didn't need to know dots and dashes anymore. The impact of this was absolutely immense. Businesses could now negotiate complex contracts in real time, completely independent of geography. The speed of commerce and just basic human connection completely skyrocketed.
Let's move and see how this builds in Section 4, harnessing invisible waves and dematerialization. The telegraph and telephone were phenomenal, for sure, but they shared one massive limitation: physical wires. It was time to break free.
The journey to wireless communication is almost like a giant puzzle with progressively larger pieces falling into place. Step 1, James Clerk Maxwell mathematically proves that light is an electromagnetic wave that can travel through space. Step 2, in the 1880s, Heinrich Hertz experimentally proves these invisible waves actually exist in a lab, though funnily enough, he didn't even think they had a practical use. And finally, Step 3. A brilliant young innovator named Guglielmo Marconi takes this pure theoretical mathematics and physics and figures out how to harness these waves for long-distance practical signaling. But how did they actually capture an invisible wave? It's honestly easier than you might think. Consider this early device called a coherer. It's essentially just a small glass tube filled with loose metal filings. When an early, broad-spectrum radio wave, generated by a high-voltage spark, hit this tube, the invisible electromagnetic energy caused those loose metal filings to instantly clump together. This clumping lowered the electrical resistance in the tube, allowing a local battery current to flow and trigger a telegraph clicker. It is a stunningly simple but brilliant way to physically detect an invisible force.
And Marconi scaled this up dramatically. By refining his antennas and grounding systems, he managed something everyone thought was impossible. In 1901, he transmitted the Morse letter S entirely wirelessly across the Atlantic Ocean, from the UK to Canada. Think about what this meant for humanity. An entire ocean, which had historically been the ultimate isolating barrier between continents, was now completely invisible to these waves. The ultimate barrier was finally permeable.
The real-world impact of cutting those wires was profound, especially out at sea. This technology quickly became a vital lifeline. The tragic sinking of the Titanic in 1912 underscored just how absolutely crucial wireless distress signals were, leading directly to international mandates requiring radio equipment on all passenger vessels. But on a broader philosophical level, wireless technology normalized a very modern idea, that there are massive, unseen infrastructures undergirding our everyday lives.
Now let's zoom out to the macro impact with our final section, 5, a planet interconnected, focusing on geopolitics and the modern world. Because what started as lab experiments fundamentally rewired our entire global architecture.
Let's look at how connectivity became the new architecture of power. Following that 1866 durable transatlantic cable, global superpowers realized that communication speed was basically synonymous with political control. The British Empire, for instance, established the All-Red Line, an undersea cable network that allowed them to coordinate imperial policies across India and Africa in a matter of minutes. Financially, markets began synchronizing stock prices instantly across continents, coupling the global economy tighter than ever before. And militarily, the famous interception of the 1917 Zimmermann telegram during World War I proved that mastering or intercepting these communication channels could literally alter the outcomes of global wars.
And this brilliantly illustrates the scientific evolution we've just covered. The mechanisms grew increasingly sophisticated over time. We started with the telegraph, using simple binary signaling, just dots and dashes. Then we evolved to the telephone, which used modulating currents to actually mimic the complex waves of human speech. Finally, we reached radio, which piggybacked audio signals onto high-frequency carrier waves to travel through the air. This precise evolution is the exact blueprint for the digital communication we rely on today. Which brings us to a final, provocative thought. I really want you to ask yourself, if those early 19th century wires were powerful enough to reshape global empires, alter economies, and completely redefine human intimacy, how are today's hyper-fast, invisible digital networks reshaping our reality right now? The 1840s are the direct, undeniable prequel to our 2020s digital lives. Every text, every video call, every single tap on your smartphone is just the newest spark in a communication age that began over 180 years ago. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you next time.